So, quick question too for an ignorant person here. Explain to me, these dispensaries were allowed, they were on there's this veil of kind of not legalizing it, but it was okay. This was a place for people to come that had this card that said, I have cancer, I have whatever, and I've been approved to get this. But those are the only people that were really allowed to come in the shop. But the owners of the dispensary would kind of use this as a place to conduct their illegal
Well, no,
things
even
going on.
those that were completely committed to just this as their business,
Hmm.
if you asked a prosecutor for the federal government at the time, they would call that operator a criminal breaking, and they would list all the federal laws. And
Mm.
if you asked the state at the time, they would say that operator has no license to operate. They're not paying taxes to the state under the business in which they're operating. As such, they are an unlawful business. And the locals at the time, regardless of the city we were in California, except for West Hollywood in Southern California, and it would be Oakland up in Northern California to start. In the cities, it was the same thing. There were no licenses. You were essentially squatting. So you were in
Oh.
this in-between place, often referred to as a gray market, with all of this demand, billions of dollars of demand of people that had discovered that marijuana helped them in their daily life. And they were
Mhm.
willing to jump through those hoops and go to these places to access this plant.
Right. So, all right, this is incredibly interesting. So you ended, I mean, your thought process essentially was to destigmatize cannabis, its uses, and make it into a mainstream thing that people could accept and use. And you can walk down Fifth Avenue and go to Chanel and then pop into MedMen, right?
My thought when we got to that place on this journey for me was it is my mission on this planet to make legal marijuana accessible to grown-ups the world over. And the way to do that is to mainstream marijuana, to destigmatize it within popular culture
Hmm.
and to present it front and center as something that is the opposite of shameful, something that those that associate with it can be proud of.
Right.
And so in that belief system, we manifested, like you said, a store on Fifth Avenue in New York City. We manifested a store on Robertson in Beverly Hills. We manifested that store on Abercrombie Boulevard. When people from around the world experience that store, whether they shop there, whether they see it from the outside, whether all they do is browse, they take that experience back to their universe. And when they go
Mm.
back there, marijuana for them is now no longer stigmatized, but
It's credible.
potentially, yeah, great word. Thank you so much. It's credible.
Yeah.
And so it was credibility for the sake of permanence, because with permanence, the world is a safer, healthier, happier place because access to legal weed, it has been proven does that. And
Right.
so that was our mission. That was my mission.
Right. Um, MedMen was once valued at over $2 billion, but ended up seeing a dramatic decline, which you talk about you talk about how this all happens. But in your own words right here, what do you think went wrong?
I think that I got to witness firsthand, and now through writing this book over the last 3 years, my hope is I get to invite people in behind the curtain to share this experience of how the world really works, how the world works, and how the world that we live in, this culture of capitalist American pop culture world, how it really does this, right? And I got a front row seat to the realities therein.
Hmm.
And it is so much more layered and nuanced and then real than, this was a business that had a big rise and a spectacular fall,
Hmm.
right? We created an industry and we created an asset class in the face of giants who wanted nothing but to squash us.
Right.
And being the pioneers that changed the laws, and then we're the first. I was the first. We were the first billion-dollar U.S. weed company. We were the first weed company to list on a stock exchange. The deal I had to figure out to get us public and I account for some of it in the book. It would be 1,000-page case study for business school if we just went into that deal, that
Mm,
we had to list the company in Canada because we were illegal in our own backyard
right.
on a stock exchange when I went public, where the value of the whole exchange was smaller than the value of my company.
Right.
Um, and so, as we go through all of this and being first, and then ultimately me as an individual, as a human, I become a public caricature, right? I become the face of corporate marijuana and the spokesperson for corporate marijuana, right? There's a real story, and this story happens all the time. As I broke down walls and took on, firing, took on assaults from
Mm,
some of the most well weaponized groups in the world, I for sure got hit along the way,
right.
as did my entire crew. And we just kept breaking down wall after wall in the face of everything from just the little money person who's being greedy, right? All the way to the Attorney General of the United States of America actually saying, stop those guys.
Hmm.
And so at
And
some
having
point in
what seemed
time,
like a personal vendetta about it.
yeah, and I don't know where the vendetta may have been coming from, but
Hmm.
we went up against people with vendettas for all different kinds of reasons. Mostly it was because marijuana was going to hurt their pocketbook if they were pharma or alcohol or, somebody else. But it could have been that they had a personal relationship where they really believe that the legalization of drugs is demonic and must be stopped, and they'll pour their life savings into it, right? We
Right.
saw that with Sheldon Adelson in Nevada, one of the richest men in the world, dedicating his resources and energy to try to stop that initiative. And we detail that a little bit in the book. And eventually, the group on the ground there prevailed. Nevada has legal weed, and there's shops all over Vegas, and MedMen have the one closest to the airport.
Right.
So this is a journey that's just true. And what happens in a true journey like this is that me being first meant I was naive.
Mm,
All the people that had seen this movie before, they went second, third, fourth, and fifth because they
mm,
knew whoever goes first eventually bleeds out, right? And as I detail in the book, who's second? GTI, Ben Kovler from the Jim Beam family dynasty, right? Who better to understand how all of this will unfold? Who better
mm,
to have the schooling of whatever familial connections he has influencing him to say, yeah, we're not going to be first, we'll be second or third because we saw this at the end of alcohol prohibition, grandson, or whatever that happens to be. We're going to help, we're going to do it again. I didn't know any of that. I had to be naive enough to take a step forward, knowing there was no way it was going to end until I was done.
right.
Um, but I hadn't seen the movie before. So when I showed up one day for work, and my chairman of the board was there and his personal lawyer, and they were there to ambush me like a scene straight out of one of the movies we've all seen, saying, this is your last day at the company you built. Um, you know, I didn't expect that. How could I? I was too naive.
Mm,
Anybody that was more experienced would have never been in that spot, but they also would have never made the decisions I made to go first. And without someone going first, we don't have what we have. So we created a ton of value for a lot of people, and a lot of people made a lot of money. I left in 2020, and these opportunistic, soulless, thoughtless, uninspired, calculators showed up, and they just drove the company into the ground, leading with filing bankruptcy in 2024.
mm,
Three CEOs later, and God knows how much more money they burned through. That's the other side of this cycle. I was part of hiring and training the initial 1,000+ person workforce for the industry. What comes with that is that I don't have off the shelf training materials. These people didn't go to some finishing school. I had to be the school, which meant I had to be naive enough to say it's okay making that extra investment in our employees, when the truth is that from a dollars and cents standpoint, that was not going to be sustainable. But
mm,
somebody had to educate those that were going to, operate and grow this industry thereafter. And, so this is just all real. I don't look at it as good and bad. I look at it as a lot of decision making. And that decision making, as it always is in entrepreneurship, is made without all of the information and a
Right.
lot of intuition, and a lot of it's wrong. And at the end of this, all you need with something that gets this big, and there's too many people, so many people that want to go dissect it for its parts and suck the money and value out of it, regardless of what it was actually doing.
Mm,
All it takes is a couple bad decisions, some bad luck, and you wake up one day and I show up and they say it's your last day, get the fuck out.
mm.
Um, and that was 10 years after, Laura and I drove to that first store with our Whole Foods bags of all this weed, saying we don't know what we're doing, but we're jumping off the diving board together in the middle of the night, and we hope there's water in the deep end.